And so tonight, first of all, let me welcome everybody. Hope everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I open a meeting here tonight to hopefully explain to some people about the medium of exchange. Most people in these days, when we think of medium of exchange, we automatically think of the Federal Reserve notes, and that's a fallacy. A medium of exchange includes anything that you want to exchange. And as Dave and I were discussing earlier, his ultimate goal is in the access of the Treasury Direct account, which I explained. Federal Reserve notes and all the obligations and other securities of the United States have zero intrinsic value, and the foreign currencies have zero intrinsic value because they're all based on the standard of the Federal Reserve note. And one of the things I want to point out that is misconstrued in regards to the gold and the value of gold is that it itself, no matter what it be measured at, whether it be troy ounces of gold or carats or anything like that, it's still based on the Federal Reserve notes, which has zero intrinsic value. So if they're saying that a 1 ounce bar of gold at 18 karat or 24 carats of gold is worth $1,524 in troy ounce gold, then what are they measuring with? Is it a like kind? No, because the gold has a substantive value in the mind of every man. It has
well, so does the dollar bill, though. So is the dollar bill. People look at it. It's all mental. It's all mental. We all know that.
It's a different value. The Federal Reserve note has what's known as a
perception of value, right? A matter of perception of value. We find gold more valuable, no doubt. But
right, because the Federal Reserve note has zero intrinsic value, and the opposite of the intrinsic value is substantive value.
I got you.
Substantive value means it has substance.
My house is substantive. My paid for house is substantive value.
Correct. The Federal Reserve notes that you used to purchase it were based on the substantive labor that you put forth to earn them. That was not considered income. Again, people, income is the investment of the zero intrinsic value Federal Reserve notes within the monetary system, regulated through the International Monetary Fund, and put out in the markets the seas of commerce in hopes through risk management that vessel will come back and have a cargo.
I just want access so I can promise to pay my ass off. Okay.
But you don't need to. That's the difference is that when you're dealing with the Federal Reserve notes that have zero intrinsic value, it'll never, ever have any value until you put the substantive value to it that was fraudulently laid upon it as a levy.
I understand.
Okay. The substantive value of gold is comparative to any other commodity on the market, because those commodities on the market are done by weights, which are converted through bushels and baskets and hectares and things like that. And those are substantive measurable values, again, where the Federal Reserve note has no intrinsic value. Okay. Now, in relation to the like kind, however, this is where it's going to get interesting, because I was thinking Joyce here is got some people wanting to come after her for as debt collectors, but they're claiming that they're not collecting a debt. And the thing is that they're claiming Federal Reserve notes for that debt. And what we've established already is an electronic record. And this is where the substantive value comes in, because we are providing what's known as substantive law. Okay. And this is the like kind in value to that of substantive gold. We are putting our value to the document that we are writing to them. And the way we are doing this is through the same medium of exchange as the Federal Reserve notes, and doing so through an electronic record, an electronic accounting. And I hope I can explain this to you right, because an electronic message that's developed from my point, originated from this device, will prove a timeline that it was originated from this device at a certain time, on a certain day, within a certain month, within a certain year, and it was then forwarded to Joyce, who then printed it off via a computer device and then mailed it off to the people asking for this acceptance to this fraudulent and dishonorable offer. And by doing so, we come by 2 witnesses ourselves, but now we have a 3rd electronic witness, and it is all a medium of exchange of information, of contract, just like the Federal Reserve note. The Federal Reserve note, though it has 0 intrinsic value, we have put substantive value to it because they are seeking economic substance in Federal Reserve notes, and this is why the coffee bean case worked.
So is my signature intrinsic, or
no? Your signature is has a substantive value according to the capacity in which you sign. Your autograph has a substantive value in accordance to the authority in which you give that mark. Your mark, same way.
It's still just a promise to pay at some point in the future. It's not actual.
No.
You're saying
No. The promise to pay is within the terms in the contract.
Yeah.
And if you know what you're doing, then you avoid the promise to pay and you discharge anything that's charged. Does that make sense? And this is the problem where people have in comprehending this. What we're doing is discharging what's being charged by putting a substantive value to it that is assured, not insured, and not as surety, but assured through the word. The word is the bond. So when I originated the word from my thoughts and views and opinions and facts and knowledge and experience and wisdom and learnedness, then I transported them onto paper and then transported them electronically, and then she'll transport them electronically onto another piece of paper and then transport them. All this transportation is costly. It's going to cost them Federal Reserve notes of approximately at least $3,578 worth. Maybe even treble that amount.
Where'd you come up with that figure?
That's what they're seeking for payment.
So how does that work? They're not collecting a debt, but it's based upon a debt. How can they not be collecting a debt?
Well, they're telling us that they're making what they're doing.
Debt validation process.
They're telling us that they're making an offer. They're not claiming that we owe a debt. They're trying to make an offer.
An offer to what?
And if we accept it, then we accept it. But so far, we haven't accepted it. Now, I sent off this 3rd email today that she'll print out and send off to them, and they should get the hint. This is the 3rd notice, and we are now claiming a fee schedule of $250 per communication from now on. It will be done electronically first through my end. I will originate it just as always.
I didn't know you could do that, Keith.
Yeah, it's the like kind. And when it comes to that tract, that legacy, this same thing. It's a legacy. I gave her information that I had for her to use. Now she's going to pass it on to this credit collector for information for them to use. Now, if they don't want to use it, that's on them. You know what I mean? So when we talk about this medium of exchange, the medium of exchange of the Federal Reserve note is at the bottom level. And if you want to make it a like kind, you take the information of contract and you convert it to the proper bond, and that is the word.
Convert it to a word, right?
You take everything that's backwards, backward, W-A-R-D, not W-O-R-D, yet it's pronounced backward. It's backward.
Right.
And if you put the hyphen in between back and ward, switch them around, and turn that word around, now it's drawback. What you need to do is draw back the information, fill it all in, and put it back down on the paper in the original sense that it's meant to be. That is the intent, and that is what substantive law is all about, the intent. When we talk about this legislated word, it's called substantive law. Yet they're doing what they're doing to us in the courts is they're doing interpretations and opinions, and it's under their discretion, and that's not the substance of the law. The substance of the law is the intent. So when they make these legislative laws that are seeking economic substance in reference to Federal Reserve notes, they're seeking zero value. Point it out to them. Here, you're seeking zero value, and yet you insist that you want zero value from me, and you have the right to harass me repeatedly. Here, let me put the proper substantive value to it under his word. And if you look at my post on that, I called it a notice of liability this time instead of a rejection letter or something like that. I actually sent them a notice of liability, forgiving them of their liabilities so long as they forgive us of our liability. Now, if they propose that we have a liability, we can prove that there is no liability in multiple ways, and thereby they did not take heed of the word that they gave. Not we gave them knowledge and asked them to act accordingly, and they didn't. They refused to accept that knowledge. That's dishonor. When we made amendments to their offer by pointing out that their offer isn't good because of certain aspects, and they didn't want to follow up on them, that's their dishonor. We're acting in honor, and that's all it takes. So when we talk about this electronic medium of exchange, we're putting value to these electronic communications, but they have to be done accordingly. You have to have your 2 or 3 witnesses. And so when you have these corporate entities coming after you for debts, let somebody else privately know and say, hey, can you bump heads with me and put something together with me and get this out? And when we do this, do it on your computer and send it to my computer, and then I can print it off. And that's your jurisdictional transfer between 2 private parties. That's proof that there's 2 or more witnesses. So even by one communication, you brought 2 or 3 witnesses. It's a medium of exchange, and it has substantive value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So why can't you do that for your car loan?
Well, that's the essence of it.
For your house note.
All you gotta do is
convert that shit and send it back.
Right. You've got to step up in the right capacity as an executor and make the right administrative moves of hiring the right trustee. Now, if that loan officer isn't the right guy to be hiring as a trustee, then maybe you should have your own broker and have something set up in a surety or a escrow agreement as surety for him acting in that capacity as trustee and taking on that liability if he does something against the law, and thereby releasing him of that liability with that escrow agreement.
Well, he's got insurance for that anyway, right?
That way you can draft this stuff up, and that's what this is. I drafted the medium of exchange. I transferred it to her. I gave it to her as part of a legacy to use. And that's what legacy is. It's something passed on for use. So I passed it on to her for use. Now she turned around and passed it on to this debt collector for their use. Now, if they don't use it, which is highly recommended that they do, because the form that they're using has zero intrinsic value. And if they want to put substantive value to their own labor and their own efforts, they will do their research and learn that what they are doing is wrong and cease and desist.
Who's the underwriter?
For their own damn good.
Right.
Otherwise, they're doing nothing but purely seeking economic substance.
If you have he has to be identified, right? He has to be bonded or insured or have an underwriter.
Yep. Well, no, that's insurance. Underwriting is insurance. When you are the master, when you are the auditor, when you are the executor, you write, you script. You don't go by prescription or underscription or less scription or subscription or anything.
Right.
You know, see, that's the thing when you get a subscription to a local newspaper, what are you doing? You're applying to read a bunch of lies. The subscription, that which is not the word, it is subword, and therefore is omitting or lying the actual truth of the word.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a subscription.
Right. I never realized that. I never looked that up.
And again, Dave, that's why it's so important.
See why they took etymology. See why they took etymology and Latin out of our education.
Yeah, and civil courses, and they changed government and history. They did all kinds of shit.
I know, evil, man.
Yeah, new math. Oh my God, talk about trying to confuse people. They did the new math to try to make it hard for the mother and father to communicate with their child on how to do math.
Right.
You don't see them teaching that new math in the fucking Amish schools.
No,
that's blasphemy.
They did the same thing with algebra and trigonometry in junior freaking high school.
Yep.
No shit about that, you know. Multiplication, add and subtract, yeah, but you know, trigonometry, algebra, I barely caught on to that shit myself.
Yeah. How's everybody doing tonight? Speak up, guys. Let's see here. I'm going to go through and unmute people that want to be unmuted. Hopefully. What are you doing, Rob?
I was hanging.
Yeah, doing good out there?
Doing the best I can do. Necessities.
Yeah. Are you fine? I didn't know, I didn't get that clarified. Are you finally off probation now, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, they discharged me.
Yeah, you're the one they said unsuccessfully discharged, huh?
No, they said the time expired and they discharged.
Yeah, see, and that's the tract. That's the tract of the con. The time.
Yeah.
See, I just got done explaining, when people think about tract of land, it's not the measurement of the borders of the size or the space. It's the tract of time. It's how long it's been used by your family. That's the tract. That's the legacy. And so the legacy of the contract is over. That's funny shit.
Yeah, they sent me a letter, you know, or I got a text because I made my communications. You must text me before you come by and all that. And before I broke my phone, he said, I have your paperwork where you want to be sent. I never answered because I already looked in the court records and it says discharge.
Yeah, no longer needed. Thanks anyway. I no longer wish to be released. That's my favorite one yet, guys. When I walked out of jail and they tried telling me I had to sign those release papers, I looked at him. I said, really? You're going to disobey a judge's discharge order? Well, you got to sign them. I put my hands up. Make me. She looked over at the sheriff. Sheriff just get him out of here. It was less than 2 minutes later, and I was out of that jail. Didn't sign shit. The last papers they got from me for that last case, all the papers said refuse to sign. And all the documents that they got from me for the 3.5 years prior to that was UCC 1-308, and then I just never showed up.
I have to do some exemption requests, research on a couple of crooked judges back in Fairfax County at some point, because they got paper of mine floating around out there. They made a lot of money off of motherfuckers.
Well, you know, I've been hitting up that code of District of Columbia.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm going through right now, and I'm looking up the duties and stuff of the officers of the court, and they've got the oaths and everything up there. So I wonder if those aren't the oaths and stuff that we're supposed to be looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I'm just wondering how that's going to work once they become aware that they're being looked into. They're being nice. I wonder just how cooperative they're going to become.
Oh, they're becoming more and more aware. I was just talking to Dave here a little bit ago. We were talking about these guys that go out and do those First Amendment audits. And I want to talk to you guys about First and Second Amendment here in a minute too. The First Amendment audits, and they're going out and they're doing okay. But the problem of that is the effect is so minimal. It really is. It's so minimal because it's only letting them know that people are aware.
Every little bit helps.
But it doesn't let them know that more and more and more people en masse are becoming aware. And this is where I get tired of people sitting on the couch not doing anything.
But they're going to find out at some point, you know.
They're going to come knocking on their doors sooner or later.
The pushback's going to be overwhelming for them. There'll be no getting away. I mean, they'll be running scared, getting strung up.
Yep. And so when we talk about this medium of exchange, and we get confused about it, this is Dave was just talking about he should have gotten into Latin and etymological roots more when he was younger, and I think we all should. We should all get into the realization of the serpentine twist that they put on these words, and this is explicitly defined and clarified if you just do your research on what is known as morphemes, graphemes, and phonemes. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat bar here. Because the morpheme of a grapheme of a phoneme is a very specific sequence, because you have a phonic sound first before you have anything. And so when we developed our languages, we had the phonic sound, but we didn't know how to write it down. We didn't know how to express it any other way. Once we realized once we figured out a way to express it in a literal sense, in an artistic, graphic sense, where we could use some kind of symbols, that's a grapheme. That's the original grapheme, the original graphic sense of our languages. And we see this in cave paintings. That's the original grapheme. Just an artwork. That's all it is. When we taught our little language that we see today, the English language, the English language is a morpheme of another morpheme of another morpheme of another morpheme of the original grapheme. It itself is a legacy of what is in origin. In beginning was word. And it was the spoken word. It was a verbalization. It was a sound. Before we even actually spoke words, it was just a sound, a vibration. A vibration that was a verb. It was an action. That's all. And so when we think about the Second Amendment today, we see this thing about the right to bear arms. And I want to explain to you the English grapheme or the English morpheme of the original grapheme of the phoneme, which originally comes from the scene. When we see the right to bear arms, it's backwards. So let's draw it back and repurpose it to its original form and draw it again. And so when we do that, we think about the right to bear arms, the right to arms bear, armorial bearing. What is an armorial bearing? An armorial bearing is the armor that man first started wearing to protect himself, not necessarily from another man, but from the pure elements. And he started running around with hides. Now, the guys over here ran around with certain kinds of hides, and they got used to making them in a certain way. It was their art form. It was their custom. It was ritual for them to do it a certain way. The people over here that weren't always in communication with them did it their way with different materials, maybe. And so when they saw each other at a distance, it was a communication. It was a means of exchange, whereby they saw something that had an armorial bearing that was wearing armor, and the bearing was from there instead of here. And that's what your right to bear arms is. The right to bear arms is to be able to go back into your time, back to your legacy, and follow it back to its origins. So when I look in these legal records as an adult, if I'd have been adopted at a younger age and didn't remember the adoption and grew up only knowing the family name Little, that's the legacy that I would be following, and it isn't true. It is false. I have an inherent right to armorial bearings, not to pick up arms and be violent, but to see people off at a distance at maybe a more and more regular course of time and get to know them and know that they're not violent people because they haven't raised their spears at us. They too have seen us from a distance and looked. So when that stupid Catholic priest went down on that deserted island that was inhabited by its own people that were not accustomed to the modernization and were still in their armorial bearing, wearing their tribal outfits, and didn't understand this priest and his wanting to convert them and make them a like kind to him, he had no right to do so. And so they raised their arms. They bared their arms and killed him. Oh my God, the Christian community was up in arms. They committed murder. No, they did not. Those people had no right to violate that tribe's right to armorial bearings, ritual bearing of their armors. They're bearing to protect. They had no right to infringe upon that in any way, shape, or form, and shame on them for not knowing better. Period. That's your right to armorial bearing, people. And we really need to learn that and stand up for it. That's what we need to stand up for. We need to stand up for the symbolicness of ourselves and the spirit that lies within. We need to quit following these manuals and start comprehending and following the spirituals. Pure and simple. Get back to the original and quit dealing with all these morphemes of the graphemes and giving it credit, giving credit to its legacy. Quit letting these people use this English. My God, I hate it. The more and more I think about it, when that judge looked at that clown in the black robe, looked at me and said, "Do you understand English?" Yes. That's going to be the first question I ask when I walk into a court again, if they ever take that challenge. Do you understand English? Yes. Great. Great. Because then you'll understand the contract terms and conditions that were put on the original root word, such as defend, and representative, because I was sent. I was pre-sent. And you can't re-present me. You can't re-sent me. I was sent by the grace of God. I am myself and my spirit an act of God. And when you called out first, Keith, again, before you followed up with any other phoneme, you already called upon the Spirit of the Almighty God. Do you will to continue? If that idiot says yes, he has already then thus denied God, because that is not God's will for him to continue in malfeasance, treason, malicious prosecution from the bench. These people better hope they never pull me into one of their idiotic clown courtrooms again. I don't know what they think, but they certainly got me to thinking, and I'm glad for it. I praise them for it. Thanks, guys. I hope you keep watching, because as you've taught me, I hope to teach you. Quid pro quo. Kind of funny how that works. So anyway, anybody else got anything to say? No? No?
Everybody's a mute.
No, it should be everybody's unmuted. Let me see here. Yeah, I can go through and unmute everybody, but they're muted on their end.
You can still unmute them.
It doesn't unmute them unless they want to be unmuted.
Oh, well, yeah, they can. You're right.
So let me finish this in here and oops. Morpheme, grapheme, and phoneme. These are important elements of any language that you will ever research. It's very important. I try to stress as much as possible. People do their research in etiology, I'll do that too. Etiology, etymology, and epistemology. Etiology would be the root word, or excuse me, root cause. Etymology would be the root word, and epistemology is the root knowledge. So think about this stuff, people, and realize that these mediums of exchange, it just takes some logic and ration to be able to tie them together and make them that contract. Make that contract. Again, con being separate and tract being time, showing that it's a separate time. Their time is not my time. My time has a specific bond, and that specific bond is the word. And it says, in beginning was word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. So again, if that clown wants to sit there and say that it's his will to forward to proceed with these the matters at hand, he's just denied God. Deny me and you'll deny him. Deny him, he'll deny you. So either way you do it, if you deny me by proceeding against my will, by following your will, sorry, you done already lost. I'm the one that makes that judicial decision. No longer will I let anybody else make up my mind for me, period. So anyway, I'm glad you guys joined in. I'm going to be posting this one. I did record it shortly after 8 o'clock there, or 9 o'clock, I guess, whenever I started. And as soon as it gets done recording, I'll be posting it on the timeline so you can come back and review it. And please share it. Please share it. In the meantime, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. God bless. Love y'all. Have a good night, everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks.
Bye, buddy.